Hey everyone, welcome back to episode number 17 of Sports the Nemo Way. I'm Alex and we're here to discuss George Mikan, the old of the old. Doug and Drew will be defending Mikan. They have him ranked 40th and 44th on their lists. Again, very similarly ranked. So let's go over Mikan's career real quick and then let Doug and Drew take over for their case. The 6'10", 245-pound center played his entire career with the Lakers. He is a 5-time champ, 0-time MVP. He's a 4-time All-Star, 6-time All-NBA after playing 7 years in the NBA. He was also not drafted to the NBA. He's a Hall of Famer with career numbers of 23, 13, and 2 on 40% shooting. So, Doug or Drew, go ahead and lead us off.
Well, Drew pointed at me and said that I get to do the initial breakdown here. Again, this, like Alex said, this is the old of the old. This is the original, one of the original big men. George Mikan, his career wasn't tremendously long. He didn't play a huge number of games. I believe it was 400 and high 400s.
439.
Oh, wasn't even high 400s. Spaced out over 7 seasons. It was an interesting career. He actually played 9 seasons of professional basketball. 7 were in the NBA. He came out of college and played in what was called the NBL at the time. In 46-47, played for the Chicago Gears and won the NBA title, or the NBL title, in 46-47. The next year, the Lakers actually played in the NBL, which is why he was not drafted, because he played for the Lakers in the NBL, and then they moved to what became the NBA in the next season. So he played another season with the NBL then, and that season with the Lakers, won the title in that year. Then he had the 6 seasons in the NBA. He won 2 titles to start, and then in 51, he actually broke his leg. He still played in the finals. He took a metal plate and they taped it to his leg, and he still played. And he averaged 20 points a game.
Wow.
But they did not win that year. And then he came back, 52, 53, 54, won titles again. He retired, took 55 off, and then they asked him to come back for half a season in 56, and they did not win a title that year either. So he kind of had a strange career. He was diagnosed as having brittle bones when he was younger. Led to several broken bones. Doctors thought he would never play basketball again after he broke his leg in high school. He didn't walk normally for about a year, but he finally rehabbed. He dreamed of going to Notre Dame, playing basketball for them. They were not interested because they thought he was too big and too slow. So Ray Myers, legendary coach at DePaul, said, "Come play for me." And he did great things for DePaul. And then on to the NBL, NBA, so forth. As Alex said, he had 5 NBA championships, 2 NBLs. So in his 9-year career, he won 7 titles, if you count both leagues. He did win an MVP in the NBL. He was 2-time All-NBL. He was the NBL scoring champ in 48 and 3-time NBA scoring champ in 49, 50, and 51. He was also the rebound leader in 53. He has a game high of 61 points and a game high rebounds of 36. And I know we've discussed old guys before because they're old guys. They have to do something really special to be considered and beyond their stats. And I felt like when I was doing all this, that 7 out of 9 seasons you win the title, or 5 out of 7 seasons you win the title is pretty special. But he also had some other things that were interesting. In part, the shot clock came about because of him. During his playing career, there was actually a game that ended 19-18 because the other team didn't want him to have the ball. And so they got ahead and they just stalled it out.
I believe I read for 25 minutes.
Yes, it was a huge amount of time.
It was 19-18 with 25 minutes of gameplay left, and they stalled the entire rest of the game.
Right.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and so the shot clock came shortly thereafter.
Guess you gotta get a W somehow.
Yeah. He also was like the first person to really do the hook shot, kind of the forerunner of Kareem's skyhook. They also widened the lane because of him. The lane was originally 6 feet wide. They widened it to 12 to try to get him away from the basket. The goaltending rules came in because of him blocking shots over the rim. If you've been in a basketball gym, you've probably seen the Mikan drill, which is something that he did to learn to use both hands around the basket. He scored 11,764 points, which was a record at the time, but not top 250 now. Had 4,167 rebounds, again, not top 250. But I thought with the special things that he did and the contributions that he made to the game, he also was involved in the ABA to some extent, that he belonged on my list. Just to throw out there, lineups puts him number 40 in their top 50. ESPN had him as number 34. He did make the NBA 96 all top 50 team, but of course that's quite a few years ago. And then Clutch Point had him at 37. So, there we go.
I have a question. Since his first 2 years, you said it was in NBL.
NBL, yes.
Since they're not like listed on Basketball Reference, does that mean they don't count those as his statistics?
Right. Those are not included in his statistics. Okay. And those, if you go down on Basketball Reference and you go down farther, it has a link to NBL stats.
Oh, okay.
And it shows his 2 seasons in the NBL, what he scored, how many games he played, all those kind of things. They absorbed the original. They consider the NBA starting with the 48-49 season, I believe.
Yes,
yeah. And those 2 years before, 1 year with, like I said, the Chicago Gears, and 1 year it actually was the Minneapolis Lakers. They started in that other league and then moved into what became the NBA.
Okay. All right. Well, before any of us rebuttal, do you have anything to add, Drew?
Oh, not much. Probably one of the only players to have more All-NBAs than All-Star appearances, I would say that.
I did find that weird, but at the same time, this time period's weird because things were being invented at different times. Yeah. Like, was the All-NBA there from the beginning and the All-Star game not? And obviously, he's not an MVP because there was no MVP award. You know, the MVP award didn't come around until, the 60s? Is that right?
Yeah, I think. Wasn't it Bob Pettit?
Yeah, Bob Pettit.
That's Bob Pettit who won.
I imagine Mikan probably would have an MVP or two if they had it.
Oh, I'm sure he would. But we're talking about a time where the first few years of the league, they didn't even keep track of rebounds. So we don't know how many rebounds he averaged the first 2 years. Of the
right.
League. Yeah. So it's a very interesting time. It is literally the first years of the NBA, like not years 1 and 2 and 3. So we're talking, like we talked about Dolph Shays.
Right.
He's not even playing at that time yet, and like Bob Pettit's not playing. Paul Arizin is not playing. And like guys that we have on our list that are old, but he is much older than some of those guys.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is the original.
Him and Dolph Shays crossed over at some point, didn't they?
I believe they did.
Yeah.
I
was reading an article about his people that he was playing against, and Dolph Shays was one of the names that came up. So,
do we remember what year Dolph Shays won the title? Was it 51, the year that...
I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't have my Shays stuff still out. Drew's our research guy. But
I imagine you have quite a bit over there, Alberta.
I have a decent, not a ton. I'm still recovering from my lost articles. Alex had a freak accident and lost all of his information and research that he had done for future episodes. So Alex is still trying to recover.
Dolph Hayes won the title in 1955.
55.
So the year he was retired.
Yeah, the year he was retired. Shades won.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
So I'll let Wade or Ray can go. I'm
Okay.
cool with that.
you can go first, Ray, and I'll go second.
Yeah, pretty impressive career for the short longevity that he had. Another old guy with weird shots, which really throws me off. Just watching some highlights before we started recording. He's got a nice little underhand scoop shot that he does in the lane, which is pretty strange. But I mean, it's nice though. He does it very well. And then the other shot. Oh my God! Only a real man can, perfect the granny free throw.
Well, that was pretty widespread in the league. I mean, even through the '60s.
Even up to Rick Barry.
Yeah, I mean, Rick Barry shot it through the '70s. Yeah,
It's crazy.
they tried to get Shaq to shoot it since he was so bad regular shooting.
Uh-huh.
Shoot the granny shot, and they said in practice he would shoot much better with the granny shot than a regular shot, but he was too embarrassed to do it in games, so he wouldn't do it.
He should have did it then.
I don't know if there's any actual science behind this, but I've heard when guys talk sports that the muscle memory is easier underhanded than overhanded because there's a lot less involved as far as like different muscles moving at different times. As you think about it, when I crumple my arm up like this, which is terrible radio right here, look how many muscles I just moved. Like back with both sides of my arm, all the way up and down my arm, my shoulder, even part of my pec just moved. Like everything. If I'm under here, there's a lot less muscles moving because my arm stays stiff for the most part.
I feel like underhanded, you have a better shot at keeping it straight on, too. I mean, you're already right there in the middle of your body. You're just going up and releasing.
Yeah.
Makes sense, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead, Ray. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. But yeah, I just thought his game style was pretty obscure. But I mean, that was the dawn of the dinosaurs there. But yeah, I mean, the scoring looks pretty solid. I mean, rebounds are good. I mean, decent all around player. Look pretty much. Can't hate on him.
Wade?
Well, on a side note, Drew, I noticed that you put Mike in ahead of Patrick Ewing.
Yep.
Really? That's intriguing. What is there a reason why? I was just curious.
I don't know. I just felt like I know obviously you're gonna say because he's a lot older and all that, but I feel like he did so much that he should be ahead of old Patrick Ewing.
Okay, that's fair. I was
He
wondering.
did what so much?
Not everything because he played a lot shorter, but like he won way more. Obviously, I know they're in much tougher. Patrick Ewing's in a much tougher time period and all that, but I just felt like he dominated his time period and made rules and all this stuff. I just felt like it was more than what Patrick did.
That's a fair point. I was just wondering. Well, before we start attempting to take apart George Mikan, I will admit I do think Mikan is he's a pioneer pretty much in the NBA. He's very important to the game. I would consider him probably the first superstar, probably at least to my knowledge, probably the first superstar the NBA ever had. I mean,
he was the best player in the league the first year of the league, so I would guess that's probably true.
Yeah. One of the famous stories they tell is about one time at Madison Square Garden. They had a big sign up that said, "Come watch the Knicks play George Mikan."
Oh, well, and there you go. I mean, so I think not talking about stats or eras or anything. I mean, he's maybe one of the most important players we have on our list as far as importance to the NBA. He was extremely important. I mean, you're a pioneer of the NBA. There's rule changes because of you that are still there today. You're the first superstar, which is all extremely important. But with that being said, the things that got me, I did a lot of research today, did a lot of reading on them. Pretty much three things stuck out. First thing, which again, we've talked about this before, the whole era is kind of like this, but the extremely low field goal percentage. I think he's about 40% for his career. I think he shot below 40 a few times. So being a big man, playing right next to the basket, being taller than almost everyone you play against, shooting 40% is kind of iffy. But that seems to be a trend of that entire era. So I actually believe I read somewhere in the article that he was like second in the league one year with like 41% field goal percentage, which is kind of crazy. But
I think the guy that beat him was like .3 field goal percentage.
Yeah.
Ahead of him. It wasn't
So-
even like he was like 45 to 41. It was like 41.5 to
yeah, it was
41.8.
kind of so that might be more of a era thing than a George Mikan thing, but that still kind of sticks out. Two was the longevity. I mean, what was it? 430 some games.
Yeah,
I mean,
130.
that's-
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, longevity is not on his side, but but the big thing was the pace of play and eras, and does he transition? And the article that I read, obviously he had all of his success, and they created the shot clock, and he retired that season saying that the game was going to be too fast for him, and then he decides to come back and plays like a half a season. And he struggles a lot more that season than he did in years past. I think he averaged like 10 points, 8 rebounds, and shot like 39%. I've even heard people make jokes about he was so slow, it might take up the full 24 seconds for him to run down court and get in position. Obviously, that's probably not realistic, but obviously, pace of play would have been, I think, a big factor for him. I think he could have been ran out of the gym in most eras. I'll just start with that and move it on.
Well, just a quick story because I was actually looking up my argument for the Paul Arizin episode, and they had an interview with him, Paul Arizin, I mean, and he said that one year in the All-Star game, he was on the opposite team of George Mikan, and he said, I walked into the locker room, and Bob Cousy said, hey, I need to talk to you. And he said, Cousy and I went in the other room, and we started discussing how we're going to deal with George Mikan. And what we ended up saying was, no matter what happens, if it's a make, if it's a miss, whoever grabs the ball, just push it up the floor, just run, and we'll score before Mikan gets down the floor. And they blew. I mean, I'm not saying like it's the end all be all. Like you said, it's an all-star game or anything. But they ended up blowing them out by like a ridiculous amount of points because every time they got the ball, they just ran, and Mikan couldn't get up the floor in time to deal with it. Anyway, I just thought that fitted in with what Wade had to say. But I do have some stuff over here. I know a couple people have mentioned it, but George Mikan played 439 games in his career, which is a very small amount. Smaller than anyone we've covered so far, including Grant Hill, Kawhi Leonard, and Pistol Pete, all guys who we struggled with their longevity issues. And both of you pointed out that Kawhi couldn't be on the list because he didn't play enough. This guy played over 100 less games than Kawhi.
But he's accomplished way more than Kawhi has.
That's like the exact line Wade used for every argument in the Kawhi episode. I did notice you pointed out the rule changes, Uncle Doug. I was getting ready to point out the rule changes as well, but not in a positive way. They did do it because of him, but it worked. That's the problem. When they widened the lane from 6 to 12 feet, his effectiveness waned. When they introduced the 24 seconds, it hurt him immensely. His impact was reduced greatly and into retirement very, very quickly. And like you said, when he came back for his one season, whether rules are not being caught up to the game or whatever, it didn't work well. But I did see multiple places where they said once they put him farther away from the rim, it is being able to move quick enough to get to the basket hurt because they did have 3 seconds in the lane even then. So it was hard for him to get posted up and get to the basket. When I think about these things, just to simplify it, I guess, when I combine era, which we all know have a problem with, the amount of time and games he played, and the lack of efficiency he had against players much smaller than him, and his lack of mobility, I just can't get behind him playing in other eras of basketball. If these rule changes affected him such greatly, those rules are in effect in every other era of basketball. And even when the rules weren't in effect, he was good, probably the best. But it wasn't like he had a Chamberlain-like effect on the game. You know, Chamberlain's out here just putting up these ridiculous stat numbers, and we're like, whoa. Like, even if Chamberlain lost all the time, like, you probably got to find a place for Chamberlain on your list. He's averaging 50 and 30. Like, that's crazy. That was just, 10 years later? With the 12-foot lane and 24 seconds and the goaltendings and all those things. 28 and 14 is not bad by any means. I'm not saying it is. But it's not 50 and 30 or 35 and 25. I do not try and deny Mikan's impact, like Wade said, on the game. He was the first big man. He ushered in the era of basketball where big men were important. Before that, big men were considered big and clumsy and useless. I literally saw in a video that said those words, like big, clumsy, and useless.
That's what Notre Dame told him when he was trying to go to college there. Yeah.
By the way, he was pre-law.
Yeah.
Like, he was smart.
Oh,
Like-
you're very smart, yeah.
And I do believe, I don't want to say, don't quote me on this, but I did read in an article while looking at this, and I should have wrote it down, that after Mikan, 34 of the next 50 titles won were won by the top 6 centers of all time. Now, that was this person's opinion who the top 6 centers of all time were, but we're talking about Wilt, Russell, Jabbar, Moses, Shaq, and Olajuwon. Those 6 guys won like 34 of the next 50 titles. So big men obviously had a gigantic impact on basketball after that. So I'm not going to deny that he had a great impact on basketball. I didn't know quite where to put this in, but I'm just going to throw it in right here. I read an article that tried to make the opposite argument, and I want to see what everybody thinks, because I have an opinion about this, but I don't want to say it until after everybody else goes. This is what they were trying to say. That since now we have found out that using big men and posting up is inefficient, and right now doesn't have really a place in the NBA. Did Mikan actually set the NBA back by introducing it to the sport, since it was just run up and down, guards handling the ball, running up and down, chucking, and now that's what we're back to 60 years later? Did Mikan actually set the NBA backwards by introducing the big man?
I think that's a bit of a stretch.
Yeah.
I think that's-
no.
I think today's game more is, to me at least, a product of we got 3-point line. I mean, that they didn't have that then, so somebody shooting a set shot from way away from the basket wasn't getting any more points than he was shooting right next to the basket, and they were all shooting a terrible percentage. So you might as well get as close as you can. Sure. Now with the 3-pointer, you get the effective
Field goal
percentage and things like that. It's a different game. You're right.
That and their shot has changed since the last 60 years. I
think-
set
I
shots.
still think the most, even in this analytic era of basketball where everything's threes, free throws, and layups, the most important thing to have on a team is someone that you can throw the ball to and it's a guaranteed bucket. And dominant big men, most of the time, are that. And I think, and yeah, I mean, if you need a bucket and you're down 2, it's the last play of the game, and the Lakers were going to throw it to Shaq, or they were going to throw it to Jabbar, or things of that nature. I don't think he said anything back. It's just we're in a different era right now. People have different thoughts. The NBA's changed 4, 5, 6 times. I mean, we're just in a different era, I think.
Right?
My thought is, I mean, if we would take the big man out and the 3-point line, you're still having people run up and down the floor making layups in the lane. The only difference is with the big man, at least like Wade said, you got a guaranteed point, and you got somebody who can defend the rim. If you don't have that, if you don't have the big man in there, But now you got a bunch of little guys, playing with the ball in the lane.
So here's my next question. I don't want to get too far off the mic and topic, but I have a question. Pre all this, there was or even if you're not at this point, if you're not playing the Lakers, you're not playing big men. Why isn't your field goal percentage better?
Good question.
If there's no rim protector, why are you not making more shots?
Yeah. I still don't understand why they're not making more shots back then.
Yeah, I don't know. The 40% is being 6'10" in that era it's a little rough.
Well, that is one thing. Another thing I wanted to ask. It has to do with Mike. Was him being the biggest and not the tallest, because they talk about like him just rotating. He moved whoever was guarding him because he was so much bigger and stronger than they were. It wasn't just that he was 6'10", he was 245, when everybody else was weighing 210. Why was he shooting the same percentage from the field as the guards?
Yeah. Well, yeah, another kind of thing that's you can kind of point at Mike as kind of a negative. In that point in the NBA, 99% of the NBA is Caucasian. Black people most of them weren't allowed to play. Obviously, there's no Europeans at that time coming to the NBA. So the talent pool wasn't as big as it would be in almost any other era, or what it should have been in that era if a lot of black people were allowed to play. And so along those lines, he literally was just playing a bunch of white people. I mean, literally, almost all just white people. So even the talent pool wasn't what it was going to be or what it should have been if African Americans were allowed to play at that point in time.
All fair points. And how many teams were in the NBA at the beginning?
Not very many.
I'm on it.
Drew's looking at it.
Well, I know, like, when Bill Russell was winning those championships, there was, 11?
Well, there was 8.
Maybe it was 8.
At one point, it was down to 8. Now, I think they had more, and then they lost some. So there were a lot fewer teams, which would concentrate the talent pool somewhat. But wait, that's a really good point. Until the league was integrated, not all the best players were there.
There were 11 teams in the first year.
Good job, Wade. That's a good one. No, but that's another thing. That's how different of an era we're talking about. You're talking about losing teams. Some of these teams were lost to bankruptcy. Now teams are being sold for billions, not an M, a B, with billions of dollars. You sell the Clippers to Steve Ballmer for $3.8 billion. But at this time, teams were going bankrupt and just leaving the league because they didn't exist anymore.
Well, even at the end of the 70s and 80s, the Pacers were having a telethon to keep their team alive. So,
well, I don't know that we've actually covered it much in the podcast, but the 70s and early 80s were a rough time for the NBA as well.
Yeah, they were.
Because a lot of fans were tuning out because of all the coke problems. They had an image issue. And not only that, but I do believe we have talked about this before on air. Games weren't on TV, and if they were in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Weren't the finals like on tape delay?
There were some years. I can remember watching them at 2:30 after the news.
That's why Bird and Magic saved the game, is the way the 70s were.
Well, like we're talking about his career, Mikan's career, started with the NBL. Chicago Gears, whoever's heard of that?
Yeah.
And he played, and we were talking about the number of games that he came out of college. I think the NBL Gears were already playing when they grabbed him, because first year he only played 25 games for them. They won the title. Then the next year he played in the NBL for the Lakers. They played 56 games. Then there was a BAA in there as well as the NBL, and then it all became the NBA. And then Mikan played 60, 68, 68, 64, 70, 72, retired, and then that last half season of 37 games.
By the way, you mentioned the broken leg stuff.
Uh-huh.
I thought about that a lot because you got to be tough as fucking nails to play an NBA series on a broken leg. All right, so kudos as shit to George Mikan for being tough son of a bitch. But then I'm going to go the opposite way and say, how bad was the fucking league that he was able to average 20 a game on a broken leg?
They did lose the series 3-1.
Only won one game.
Wow. Yeah.
So I give Mikan credit for his pioneerness and his toughness, because that really grabbed my attention. Because I had read that before you said that. That he played the finals on a broken leg because they taped a metal plate to his leg so it wouldn't break more. Which again, man, the doctors of the time, guys.
Yeah.
Hey guys, how about we just get this metal plate and we tape it to his leg?
Oh yeah, guys, that sounds great. Yeah, let's do it.
And then Mikan agreed to it. That's the other thing. The other thing is, by the way, guys, he's from Joliet, Illinois.
Hell yeah, the Blues Brothers, baby.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. By the way, I do believe in our next episode we're going to discuss somebody from Bowling Green, Missouri.
Oh.
But I'll leave that for next episode. So I guess my first question to you guys being Doug and Drew, is the games. It's hard for me to wrap my head around the 439 games, and and the three of us argued pretty heavily that Kawhi hadn't played enough, and Grant Hill hadn't played enough. They both played considerably more games than that. Where are you guys at on that?
Would Kawhi have played on the broken leg?
Oh my gosh.
No.
I struggled with the number of games too. I mean, when you look at the seasons and he stretched it out to 9, and the other 2, he's played a little longer. But yeah, there are not a lot of games there. I just felt like with all the accomplishments he had, the 7 and 9 or 5 and 7, however you want to look at it. And I know it was a totally different time. And we've talked about old guys in the past. If they don't do something really special, we don't really consider them that much because the stats are different and so on. And I just felt like he had done so much for the game, and he obviously was the best of the best at the time if they're winning all those titles. That's why I put him on. But you're right. It is an incredible short number of games.
I got a question then to kind of branch off of that. I don't think anyone here would argue about what he accomplished when he played. I mean, it's pretty obvious he was the best. I mean, the best player in the league. But one of the main things that I did on my list was, how do you transition to other eras? And I don't think he transitions at all, to be completely honest. And what is your opinion on how he transitions to other eras of basketball?
I second that, Wade.
He wouldn't be a superstar.
No.
He just physically, because of the trouble he had with his legs, the injury he had in high school. I mean, he fought back from it, and he was tough about it, but he could not get up and down the floor that well.
Yeah.
And today's game probably would be too fast for him. It probably has passed him by. So, yeah, that's a good point.
Well, I mean, I don't remember what episode it was. Was it Shea's episode where we discussed possessions per game? The 60s Celtics teams have the fastest possessions, or the most possessions per game in history of basketball. I mean, they were like 136 a game one season. I mean, that was just 5 or 6 years after this. That Kuzi and Russell and those guys were flying up and down the floor. Just 5 years later, if he would have, you can't help when you're born. I get that. But, if he was playing 5 years later, not as an old man, just like if we moved him 5 years, I guess is what I'm saying. He was born 5 years later. Would he have even been able to play then?
It had been tough. He is 6'10". He was fairly strong, but he did not move. He couldn't run up and down the floor that fast.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you if you were done.
No.
But, even when they just integrated the 24-second shot clock violation, he obviously retired and said it was too fast for him. Then he comes back, changes his mind and comes back. And then his stats are cut in half. He averaged 10 points, 8 rebounds, I believe.
That's right.
And that's just a 24 shot. Now, I don't know how healthy he was that time. I don't know.
He'd just taken a year off. I don't know how much he had played.
I don't
what kind of shape he
know
was
his
in.
health situation. But to me, just the shot clock violation, and it affected him that much, that was a one of the main red flags that I had.
Well, I mean, it can't help that you're shooting 40% or 41% every year from the field, and they move you 6 feet farther away from the basket. It's not going to help that efficiency. I mean, you see the last couple years of his career, they drop a couple points in field goal percentage. I'm sure that's probably had something to do with it, where he's much farther away from the basket now, and it's not like at that time there wasn't, it wasn't Shaq. He wasn't backing you down to the basket. He was trying to score from where he caught. So essentially, he's shooting hooks from 12 feet or 10 feet instead of 4 or 5, 6 feet.
Yeah, he didn't have Kareem's skyhook. It wasn't going to go in from that far out.
No, you're absolutely right. But I will say, you said earlier, if you've been in a basketball gym, you've probably heard of the Mikan drill. That drill's still done in gyms today.
Right.
Yeah, I did it at practice this year. To say that it's still around now.
Yeah.
Are we nearing the end here?
I think so. We're going to give our closing statements. You want to go first, Ray?
Sure. Pretty impressive first time. I don't know. Weird era for a basketball player. I mean, like Wade was saying, the talent pool really wasn't superb. But I mean, you have to start somewhere, and you have to have some pioneers, and you have to have the game evolve at some point. And for his era, he was pretty much the man. So, I mean, even with all the goofy shooting and all the slow play and the rule changes and everything, I mean, he still did, a pretty decent job for, the 7 years that he played. So I have to give it up to him.
Yeah, Wade, you want to go?
Sure. I'm kind of just going to repeat some of the stuff I already said, but I think for the era he played in, he was dominant. Winning championships, was the first superstar the NBA ever had. If this was a list of most important players of all time, he'd probably be in the top 2 or 3, to be completely honest. He was extremely important to the game of basketball, I think, and that can't be taken away at all. But the big red flag for me was the pace of play and his ability to adapt to any other era of basketball. So, extremely important player, pioneer for the NBA, but he wasn't in my top 50 due to his ability to transition to other eras.
I don't want to try and sound like a broken record because a lot of what I have to say, Wade just said, but he is very important. I'm not a believer that he ruined basketball for 60 years. I think big men are an integral part of the NBA, and I think it's coming back that direction anyway. Embiid and Jokic are doing their best to bring them back. But a lot of what I thought Wade said as far as translating to other eras, even like I said a few minutes ago, even just 5 years after he played, would have been hard for him to play. So that's where I struggled, and that's why he eventually was left off my list.
Well, from the other side of the argument, I just think for obviously playing all that short amount of game, with all the stuff he accomplished in this short amount of time, I just feel like it's hard not to acknowledge all he did for that short period. Now, I know that at the very beginning of all of it, without all this stuff, I just feel like he did so much that he deserves to be acknowledged on my list.
I think Wade probably said it very well when he said one of the most important. Maybe not top 50 players, okay, but definitely one of the most important, and maybe that's why he ended up on my list, just because of all the things he had done. And that's a good way of thinking about it, Wade. I hadn't thought about it that way. That's something I like that. But I hope that maybe we've educated some people about George Mikan, and I know I learned a lot digging into him. And interesting guy that helped start the NBA, and he also, when he retired, just a side note, helped start the ABA.
Yes.
He also had a long-standing lawsuit against the NBA to get pensions for older players. I mean, he was, like you said, pre-law lawyer, businessman. But he fought for other NBA players, old players, that weren't getting the money. So which, again, goes to Wade's point of important player. So, interesting guy.
Yeah. Well, guys, it was a nice battle back and forth there for the Mikenites. But I guess we'll move on to our trivia section here to round out the episode. Has anybody got a question ready?
I'll go before I forget.
All right.
All right. Make sure I got the year right. And we're going to stay with the Lakers here. We're talking about George Mikan. In 1946, what was the franchise called? What was the Los Angeles Lakers franchise called? I'm sorry, in 1946.
So you want city and name or just name?
If you give me the name, I'll give it to you. But try to the city and name. I believe this is the NBL. I believe.
Wow. All right, I got mine. I don't know though.
Yeah, I'm just guessing.
Waiting on Ray and Drew, the bums.
Well, I have no idea.
All right, I'm ready.
Everybody ready?
Yep. I have
Nice.
the Minneapolis Lakers.
Okay.
I have Minneapolis Lakers.
Okay.
And I just didn't think of that much obvious, so I said the bow ties.
I said the Twin City Lakers.
It is the Detroit Gems.
Ooh.
Okay.
Wow.
It was the year the Lakers were founded. They were founded by a guy named C. King Boring, and they were 4-40 that year.
Ouch.
It was this was the Detroit Gems' only season.
Because the Mikan played for the Chicago Gears,
Yeah.
and they won the title.
Well, good question there, Willard. Although I don't know if that counts because that's not the NBA.
Well, that's a fair point.
Well, they did play with balls, so I mean,
I got my question.
All right, go, Drew.
The tallest player in the history of the NBA is who?
Okay. You ever are so sure of an answer and afterwards you're like, wait, was that too easy?
I know it's
Am I
one.
right?
I know it's one of two guys. I just don't know which one was actually technically taller.
Well, I have my answer.
And I'm gonna misspell this really bad, but
Oh, if you're misspelling it, I'm worried because mine's easy to spell.
I'm going out on a limb here.
all right, locked in.
okay.
You ready, Wade?
Yeah.
Flip them over.
George Marichon.
I got Manu Bowl.
I said Chuck Nevitt.
I said Sean Bradley.
Wade got it.
Oh, damn it! So how tall was he?
7'7".
Okay, yeah, Chuck Nevitt was 7'6".
Well, how tall was Manu Bowl?
I don't know. It doesn't say.
Bradley was
I think-
7'6".
I think Bull and Marichon were like less than an inch apart. I think. Weren't they? Wasn't Bull like 7'6", or a little over 7'6", or something like that?
I'm not sure.
I thought he was.
Yeah, and I think Marichon was like a half inch taller or something.
Ray, Doug, you got one? Or
I'll go. Yeah, I'll go with him. Let's see. Who was the first ever number one overall draft pick in NBA history in 1950?
First ever number one.
Number
draft pick.
one overall draft pick in NBA history in 1950.
This could have been some bum we don't even know. It's gonna be some short white guy that is just like has a Fred Smith.
Smith's a popular last name. You might want to stick with that.
Exactly. Oh man.
Going with the most popular name ever.
John Doe.
All right, I got mine.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Go ahead.
All right, I got Jack Twyman.
I got
Koozie.
Mike Smith.
Bob Smith.
It was Chuck Scher.
Again, some short white guy I never heard of, I bet.
I figured you can't go wrong with Mike Smith. That's the most common name ever.
Uncle Doug, you got one?
Yep. Okay. We talked about free throws last time, and I asked about the worst for a career. Let's talk about the worst free throws percentage for a season. Now, I will say this stat is based on you have to miss at least 125 free throws in an 82-game season. So it's somebody that's going to play a lot. The worst free throw percentage for a single season.
Okay, I got mine.
I know this guy shot really terrible, but I don't know how many he shot for the season. All right, I'm ready. Dude.
Okay. I've got two names. I'm trying to think.
Well, we only need one.
I know.
Pressure's on.
Would you like to use your 50-50?
Lifeline.
I'll give you an answer if you want to answer. Can I call my dad?
It was clearly Ray Allen. Drew. Just write it down.
That's not Ray Allen. I'll just go with this. All right, I'm ready.
All right, let's see it.
I have Andres Biedrins.
I have Andre Drummond.
I said Mutombo.
I have Shaq.
Same answer as last week. Ben Wallace.
Oh,
Shot 33.6% for the whole season.
Wait, I was thinking about Andre Drummond.
he had a season where it was really bad.
Yeah, it was like 35.
Yeah, he shot pretty bad. I think it was just like 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, I remember him and DeAndre Jordan.
Yeah.
All right, here's my question.
Shit.
In what country was Hall of Famer Dominique Wilkins born in? Ooh, everybody froze. They all just looked at each other like crap.
Yeah, I got mine. Pure guess.
Anybody else?
Good.
Locked in.
Yeah,
I got it.
All right, let's see them.
I said Bahamas.
Germany.
Dominican Republic.
I said France.
Correct answer is France.
Yeah.
Hooray!
I've seen it somewhere.
We got what? 2 answers right, me and Ray.
Yeah. Jeez. So after episode 17, the standings are as follows: Ray with 12,
Yes.
Alex with 16, Doug with 23, Drew with 24, and Wade with 26.
No way.
So Wade extends his lead by 1 to have a 2-point lead. His biggest lead of the podcast. Yeah, Drew. I do believe Drew has had a slightly larger lead, but this is Wade's largest lead. But that's it for this episode. The George Mikan, the oldest player we will be discussing on this podcast. Can't get much older than the first year of the NBA. We appreciate your listen, and please tune in next week while we talk about Adrian Dantley, who will be defended by Wade and Doug. Doug has a lot of episodes here in a short amount of time. But we appreciate it, and we'll see you next week.